So as we enter this topic of study, some of you Sangamates who are involved in, well, we're all involved in the topic of climate and earth and change and concern, but some of you will be stepping forward to give talks the way we did with the Brahma Viharas. And what I want to do in these entry talks is one, to bring forward Joanna Macy as an amazing bodhisattva, and to bring forward her Dharma, because her teachings have always come out of the Dharma. So in a certain way, I want to set the ground of what we're doing through the ground of which, out of which she lives and she teaches, which is great hope, which is great faith and love. And so I thought I've got world as lover, world as self, and a wild love for the world. I will also say there are so many good books out, and we're going to be recommending some of them in the newsletter and sending out videos. And don't get yourself overwhelmed, just do what you want. And Joanna Macy is wonderful. So the first thing I wanted to do is give a quote from the Prajnaparamita. Did this on Monday too. This is going to be really grim and hard, and I hope you are really depressed and despairing by it. No, that's a joke. I think it often feels that way. It's like there's some hesitation about turning towards what's happening in the world. So this book begins with, from the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines. I should not like to have the Bodhisattva think this kind of work hard to achieve and hard to plan out. If they did this, there are beings beyond calculation, and that Bodhisattva will not be able to be of benefit to them. Let the Bodhisattva, on the contrary, consider the work easy and pleasant, thinking that they, you, are the mother and father and children of all beings. For this is the way to benefit all beings, whose number is beyond calculation. So we'll approach this the way a parent might talk to a child or a grandparent, or it's like, why in the world would people want to not follow you, but why would anybody want to listen to you? Probably if you're just going to scare them and make them more anxious, which is not to say to be in denial, but what's the ground out of which we are living and experiencing our lives? Gretchen, can we turn the heat down? Is that possible? Yeah.
Everything's possible.
Oh, anything. Wow, see, she just said anything's possible. Okay. And here's a little dedication from A Wild Love for the World. Stephanie Kaza, who also has beautiful books. I just wanted to read you just a little bit what she says about Joanna Macy. She says, in Joanna's bedroom, between her bed and the altar in the corner, hangs a picture painted by her beloved monk, Chogyal Rinpoche. It depicts a bodhisattva joyously leaping off a cliff, arms spread wide. This is how I think of Joanna, with her own unique quality of fearlessness. She leaps. I love that, actually. I used to have repetitive nightmares about being on a cliff with a trail road path that got narrower and narrower and narrower, and it was very, very steep, and I got more and more scared. And I dream it and I dream it, and there was just not, and I was backed against the wall, and there was some place I always knew that the only way out, if there was a way out, was to make some kind of a leap. And I remember at certain points in my spiritual life, actually, was the feeling of, oh, I can leap now because I know how to fly. Not because I know, I mean, I used to, when I was a kid, I used to get, I didn't mean to do any of this. I used to get up in trees with a jump rope around my waist and go like this really, really hard trying to fly. And then I kept falling to earth and falling to earth. And I feel like I needed to fall to earth. I feel like I really practice, and we all practice falling to earth. We need to be here, but there's also something of faith in a leap, where I just remember dreams after that where I could just leap off the edge of what I was terrified of, and something completely different happened. So I really identify. You probably all have your own stories, and you probably need time, but we don't today for that. So she says, Stephanie Kaza says, so let these stories, these teachings inspire your own awakenings. May all of us have the courage to open ourselves to the time that we live in, to let it shape us as we in turn shape it. May we perceive what is being asked of us. May we awaken here on this sharp edge of uncertainty. That's the dedication of merit. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you a little bit of Joanna's teachings. Because her teachings are all, Joanna, it's interesting that she both has a Tibetan background, but she also has she's a scholar and a practitioner. She has a really deep ground in early Buddhism. So it's a beautiful thing to have both. Dependent co-arising. The Buddha called our interconnectedness Paticca Samuppada, dependent co-arising. It is equated with the Dharma in both meanings of that term, the Buddha's teachings and the law of life itself. The Buddha's teachings aren't something laid on top of the world. The Buddha's teachings, when they're spoken with truth and authenticity, is just like, it seems to me like what a tree would teach if it could talk. You know, it's just like, or if a cell had a voice and it told you the experience of interconnection is the teachings arise out of the deepest truth and the deepest reality. The Buddha said, those who see the Paticca Samuppada see the Dharma, and they who see the Dharma see Paticca Samuppada, dependent co-arising. Gautama Siddhartha, the man who became the Buddha, left a life of luxury and privilege to seeking liberating wisdom, and engaged in years of yogic practices under the most reputed masters of his time. But he found no teaching. He kept, my understanding is, the stories say, is that he would go and he'd study with some of the best teachers, and they'd all say, you're wonderful, and can I make you the, please, can I pass the teachings to you, and will you co-lead the community or whatever? And he'd say, no, thank you. I really thank you very, very much, but there's something not quite here. And so that's what led him finally to just simply sitting down under the Bodhi tree. That's kind of sweet, isn't it? That in the end, he just sat down on the earth under the Bodhi tree, and he touched the earth. It to me is so, I trust that. I entrust ourselves to that, because it means there's nothing special here. There's nothing that nobody can't access or already know or wake up to. Relying on his own unswerving determination, he finally stopped wandering and sat under a shady tree and committed himself to stay there until he reached some insight into the mystery. And sitting under the tree, he began not with abstractions or religious beliefs, but with his own experience, focusing on the immediate existential aspects of life. and he traced how the basic factors of being alive, such as awareness, sensation, feeling, wanting, give rise to each other. And in doing so, he found no first cause or primary mover. Like, I mean, the teachings say this leads to this, and this leads to this, and this leads to this. But then there's the leap in the Prajnaparamita sutras that say, this is not linear, folks, which is what the Buddha wanted to teach from the very beginning, but they had the feeling nobody would understand. But the deepest teachings, the Prajnaparamita teachings, say there's nothing to believe in here, and there's nothing linear here. Because if you sit down in the middle of the world, there are patterns and circuits of contingency arising and sustained by their own interplay. It's alive. It's radically and completely alive. It was then in the crucible of his unwavering attention that the realization of dependent co-arising swept upon him. The Mahapadna Sutta says, coming to be, ceasing to be, ceasing to be. At that thought, brethren, there arose a vision of things not before called to mind, and knowledge arose. Such is form, such is the coming to be of form, such is its passing away, such is cognition, such is its coming to be, such is its passing away. And he abided in the discernment of the arising and passing away. Heart Sutra, there is, there isn't. No eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue. And there are eyes and ears and nose and tongue. So what is this mystery? The Buddha beheld the flowing interaction of all things as they provide occasion and context for each other's emergence and subsiding. Now, the amazing thing to me, which blows my mind, is this is happening simultaneously. It's like everything, past, present, future, everything is more than even flashing in and out of awareness, but it's in some of the sutras you click your fingers, but it's so much there's nothing sequential in this, but it's the way we perceive things as sequential, which is why we suffer, because then we think, well, I was a good person, why did that happen? Or why I mean, we all know this in 100 million different ways. This 2 + 2 should equal 4. And then when it equals 0 or 12, or we get all confused and frustrated, and then we suffer, and then we try to make it fit our will again. And then, which is what the Buddha did with this, is if you read the Avatamsaka Sutra, it's mind-blowing. It's like the whole cosmos, which is said to be the description of what the Buddha really experienced. And then he said, people are never going to get this or believe it. And then there's stories about all the Buddhas and gods, and say, Buddha, you promised you were doing this for all people. And he walked around for a bunch of days and really pondered it. And then he finally said, okay. And then he taught the four, this is my little compilation of the teachings, which is when then he taught the Four Noble Truths, is he made it really simple. There's a cause of suffering. It's because you think the world is solid. Well, there is suffering. Let's start with there is suffering. Human beings suffer because we resist the world. The cause of it is you put yourself at the middle of the middle of it, and you make it all about you. And it won't cooperate. So then sit down, breathe, deeply study your own experience, which is the experience of being human, and drop body and mind and give yourself to the movement and the sounds and the feel and everything without making it a thing. And then, of course, know that you will, and that's okay too, but it's so dynamic and alive. And that's the ground of when you study climate change. And when you, it's like, it is like if you think if you're hopeless, that's just some idea for trying to make all of this small again. I mean, something is happening and something will happen and we don't know what it is. And we may like it, we may not like it. You may live, you may not live. Maybe somebody will invent something amazing. I mean, but the ground, we are actively a co-participant in creating the world. So how we be with it, that's the ground of deep practice. That's the ground out of which the world that I believe in, not as something, but that's the ground of faith. That's what I stake my life on, which is a life of vow, which is I'm here with all of you to live the deepest, clearest, most loving, kind, connected life I can for all of us and for all beings, and for the roses outside the door, and for everything past, present, and future. Okay. Dynamic web of interdependence. And then she says, I'm condensing this a little bit. There's a co-arising of knower and known. When you try to impose your belief system on something, I mean, please know something, but know it in this moment and then let go of it the next moment so that this moment can inform you. That's part of what we're going to be doing over this next period of time, is we're going to be helping each other see and understand more deeply so that we can see and understand the web of interconnection and be with our concern and anxiety and fear with different eyes and ears, which isn't to say, let's not do a spiritual bypass here, but let's ground this, because what we need to know comes out of not knowing is most intimate. Let the world come close and touch us and move us and open us. The Buddha taught that perceiving and knowing happen through a convergence of factors: a sense organ, a sense object, the contact between them. Knowing this is transactional, like a fire that cannot burn without wood or dry grass on which it feeds. All consciousness requires an object. And perception is a highly interpreted process. We create our worlds, but we do not do so unilaterally, for consciousness is colored by that upon which it feeds. Subject and object are interdependent. Called karma. We interpret and color the world through our karma and our conditioning, which isn't good, bad, or otherwise. It's just be aware of it. Wake up to it. Because if anything in the world was ever asking all of us to make a leap individually and collectively, it's this time. And it's already happening. It's just we thought it was just going to be this wonderful leap, and we didn't think that things were going to arise like dictators and wars, and we thought maybe we were done with all that. But hey, folks, Buddha had greed, hate, and delusion. It's like this is what we used to wake up in. So let's, as much as we can, stop being shocked. I mean, trust me, I'm as shocked as anybody, as dismayed as anybody, but then let's find the ground and make another step and another leap over and over together. Then she says, there's a co-arising of body and mind. There's a larger body and a larger mind. Consciousness pervades all forms of existence. Consciousness is throughout, but it is not unitary. It is not some essential glue or essence. Consciousness co-arises with form. It is in every instance particular. It is characterized not by sameness, but by its own unique presence. Its thatness or suchness, called Tathagata, it's a word I haven't said, tathata in Sanskrit. All worlds and planes of existence teem with consciousness. Our minds can perceive connection with all life forms and learn from them, as the Buddha did with the elephant and rabbit and serpent and many others, referring to them in terms of early incarnations. The Dharma vision of a co-arising world alive with consciousness is a powerful inspiration for the healing of the earth. It helps us see three important things. First, it shows us how profoundly we're entangled in the web of life. We are not outside of anything. We are smack dab in the middle of everything. So let's take responsibility for it in the most beautiful way, which is to live a deep, awake life and to wake up in the middle of the mud. We can relieve ourselves of our human arrogance and loneliness. Two, it frees us from having to have it all figured out ahead of time. It frees us from having to have it all figured out ahead of time. For solutions arise as we walk the path and meet each other on the road. And three, lastly, it reveals our distinctiveness as humans. It's precious to have a human life because the capacity that human beings have in the most profound way is to choose to make choices.